Hello, welcome. I prefer to stand. Thank you for coming. We had a great kickoff meeting. What was that, a couple months ago? I don't know. Time's going by really fast. So here we are again. Spring has sprung, and I think everybody really liked the idea of having the different lake committees come together and share ideas and to see what's working, what's not working, what might be coming down the pike that might be available to us in the future that isn't presently. So thank you all for being here. I recently, last Tuesday, went up to Albany with Laura Kaspar, who is here. She's the vice president from the Mohegan Lake Improvement District, so our neighboring lake. And so there's very many similarities, at least to our lake here in Lake Peekskill. And she will share with you more about what we were advocating for in terms of legislation up in Albany. But CJ and I went up there with Laura and Ken, who's the president, and also the president, Dean Long. Dean Long, who's the president of NYSFOLA, Federation of Lakes, which was great to have him along, and another resident from Mohegan Lake joined us. And we had 10 meetings. It was like we were running around the Capitol building, one meeting after another, which was a great experience. And then we ended by talking with Matt Slater briefly. He came off the floor to talk with us, and we met the chair of the committee, and also stopped in at Rob Rollison's office. We didn't get a chance to speak with him, but I spoke with his staff, dropped off some information, and the next day he called me that he signed the bill as a co-sponsor. So that was like a big win for our team. Yes. So we also have Joe Scapoli here, the watershed inspector of Peekskill, so he can share with us a little bit as well, and we'll see. You know, I did not put out a formal agenda for this meeting because it's not yet a formal commission, but if that's something we all want to do, we can look to see what next steps we need to take. Would you guys like to add anything just in terms of our lakes? And I know we're all hoping for a good season.
I was going to say, I'm happy we're all here. I'm glad Rolfson signed the bill. Thank you for coming, and all of you guys for coming. And the lakes are obviously really important.
Yeah, same thing. I'm happy that you guys are all here. I think it's wonderful that we're bringing all the separate lake communities together. There's obviously some information that can be shared between all of you, and hopefully, what one person learned and spent money to study or use, you can transfer from lake to lake. So I think this is great. So I hope that this continues on.
Great. Okay, so I'm going to turn it over to Laura.
Yeah, you should actually wear this.
Yeah, sure. There we go. Make it effective.
Can you hear me okay? So is it ones that shine directly that way? That might be. All right. So again, my name is Laura Kaspar. I'm the vice president of the Lake Mohegan, the Mohegan Lake Improvement District. We are a park district of the town of Yorktown. So our funding basically comes from tax assessments for anybody who officially has access to the lake. Basically, there's the people who, it was all originally private lake districts, and it's deeded, to individuals. And so is that how things work here or not?
Yes.
Okay, so same kind of thing. And we have been, that was one thing I didn't put down. So this is our lake. It's about 100 acres. It's a long and thin lake, and I live near the Lake Mohegan Park, section 1 on the west side, and I know from swimming it's about 1/8 of a mile across there. So I'll swim back and forth. But it's about a mile long, and we have 7 official beaches around the lake, and many of them are now actually, the individual beaches are park districts of the town, because they've basically deeded their land to the town, and then the town collects more in taxes specifically for that beach. I'm on the west side of the lake. We're still an independent one, so we have to have people sign up and pay money individually to be members. So there's a variety of different ways of doing it. And Ken Bilfer, who some of you may have met before, Ken is just involved in everything. He's from Mohegan Colony at the south end. So, let me see. I wanted to give you just a little history of the development around Lake Mohegan, and it probably, some of it may be very similar to what's happened around here, but basically, we had a little bit of, there was an inn, Monk's Inn, there in the Revolutionary time period, and apparently it was where the Tories would go to drink. So, but around the late 1800s, because of the train coming up to Peekskill, they put in a trolley that first came, it was just Peekskill to Mohegan, but I'm pretty sure they extended it up to here, didn't they? Yeah. And so that brought a lot of people from New York, and we actually had, the Mount Pleasant Hotel was one of the early ones in the mid to late 1800s. The St. Nicholas Hotel was right on the north end of the lake, right along, just in from Route 6, and that had 500 beds in the 1880s. And so we've had a lot of, the Mohegan Inn, which was developed, again, directly on Route 6, basically. It was where the trolley stopped, and that had 150 beds. So we had a lot of people in the area in the summers. And I do a lot of historical stuff, looking up, I have a lot of postcards. I have more than 50 postcards from Mohegan Lake. And I also have, I've looked up a lot of news articles and ads, and the ads always claim that it's a higher elevation, so you don't have to worry about malaria. Yeah, I don't know. Apparently it was concern at the time. So in lower lying areas. The Mohegan Lake, Lake Mohegan Military Academy is, if you're on Route 6, you know where the CVS is now? And just across the street, there's like a daycare center and a bank, and there's now a Taco Bell. So that was where the military academy was. And it was a boys' school from fairly far back, again, sort of 1880s, and it was world famous. They brought students in from Europe, from South America, and Mexico, and many of the states. And Robert Moses, you guys have probably heard of him. He went to the Mohegan Lake Academy, he and his brother.
That explains a lot.
It was a military academy in the style it taught. It wasn't, it was, the guys who ran it were actually very more European in the, the kind of cultural things, and there was a lot of it was on reading the classics and the great thinkers, kind of. And so, and he actually said that it had an influence on his, because when he started, he was very into doing things for the people. It just ended up being people with cars more. But anyway, so the lake's been around a long time. People have been swimming in it a long time. There has been phosphorus going into it for a long time. We actually had, I don't know if it was in that, there was a farm, Mohegan Lake Farm, which covered like the bottom portion of the lake, and they had a lot of cattle and chickens. And so all of that would have gone into the lake too. As a consequence, we are, according to DEC, an impaired and eutrophic lake. And we consistently have phosphorus. In the last decade, our median is 0.107 milligrams per liter, and the advised level is 0.02. So we're 5 times what you want to have in a healthy lake. We have frequent HABs blooms. There was one year where we were number 1 in the state for the number of harmful algae blooms we had and the amount of toxicity in the algae blooms that they found. And so that was the point at which we're like, we have to do something. And we have, I was talking with someone about the depth of your lake, and our lake, the maximum depth that we can measure is about 18 feet. But we have approximately 20 feet of muck below that measurable 18 feet of water. And so, and there's just a whole lot of phosphorus and a whole lot of organic matter in that muck. And so this is one of the things we fight against in trying to keep down our phosphorus and our algae blooms and things like that, is the stuff that comes out of that in the summer. Because it's nutrient rich and it's accumulated over a really long time. There are people who claim we used to have a depth of 50 feet. I don't know if that's true or hearsay, but they claim that, years ago, you could see a lot more. So there has been the Mohegan Lake Improvement District. I think it was created sometime in the 1980s by a guy named David Wright, a lawyer who has worked with a lot of lakes and things. Yeah. So anyway, he started it, and he also ran it for a long time. He was the head of it, and he started a lot of these early things. We started a home-built aeration system fairly early on, but it was all done in bits and pieces and, added to. And I remember going to meetings where Dave was saying, I read this stuff about trying barley straw. And so one season we had bales of barley straw floating around in the lake, which the ones in red are like, didn't really work. He had what I thought was a great idea. They actually drilled a well, because you guys probably have a fairly long residence time in your lake too. I don't know if you have much outflow from your lake. The residence time is how long water sits in the lake before it moves out.
Very slowly.
Yeah, ours is like a couple of years.
Meanders.
Yeah. So ours just.
Here, we're from a lot of lakes here.
What's that?
We're here representing
Oh.
all the lakes in
Okay.
Putnam Valley.
Okay. Great. But a lot of the lakes around here have that issue, if they're natural lakes, that they don't have a lot of outflow. And so one of his ideas was, why don't we increase the water coming into the lake so more of the water comes out of the lake? And they drilled a well at the southern end of the lake, because our outlet's on the northern end. And they tested the water in the well, and the water from the well had more phosphorus in it than the water in the lake did. So we capped that well off. We considered dredging to try to get some of that muck out. And aside from being extremely expensive and disruptive, we had to test the muck on the bottom that was going to go into, whatever we had to get rid of, and the amount of copper in the muck from all of the years of, because again, in the old days, people will talk about, they used to just throw hunks of, copper chloride into the lake. And there's so much copper there's enough copper in the sediment that it counted as toxic waste. So we would have had to dispose of anything that was removed in a toxic waste dump. So again, dredging was not a possibility. We were doing a lot of weed harvesting back then to try to get rid of milfoil, maybe before they knew that helped create brand new milfoil, because it, propagates by fragmentation, and we were fragmenting a lot of it. But I will say that we have a new weed harvester, but we don't have to do much weed harvesting now, because our site distance is so short that most of our microcystis is just not, or Eurasian milfoil is not healthy because it's not getting enough light. So our bacteria and algae are taking care of our Eurasian milfoil for us. So in the 2000s to 2010s, we tried stopping using the copper sulfate to see maybe it was taking out the good, algae and messing with the balance. And at first, it maybe seemed like it was doing a little bit good, but then we were just getting huge algae blooms. And so I think it was after the year that we topped the state for harmful algae blooms that we went back to using copper sulfate to just try to keep the lake healthy enough for people to swim in it some of the time. We actually, and Ken does not make a big deal of this, but we actually got a permit to do alum once in 2002. And we had good water quality, good visibility and things for about 2 years, because they put enough on to be good for a while, but it didn't last very long. And so again, things were getting worse, and we'd been going to the NICEFOLA conferences and talking to people from DEC and trying to say, well, what about alum? But what about alum? And there was a guy there who was really trying to get it in. And so we just decided, we're just going to put in a permit. So I wrote a permit for alum in 2014 and submitted it to DEC. And DEC's response was, will you please remove that application? Because they said they couldn't, they couldn't permit it. And so basically, we started looking into aeration systems. We got a grant, got a new weed harvester, and again, we've been pushing on alum since before 2014, but we keep trying to figure out ways to get the DEC involved. And so in the late, I think 2017 or something, Cuomo decided he was going to go after harmful blue-green algae, and he was going to come up with all these plans, and he hadn't included nutrient inactivation like alum. And so Ken actually wrote a letter to him and presented him at one of the meetings saying, you know, this was really something that could be helpful that he hadn't included, and we were, you know, a perfect sized lake to, you know, be considered for it. And so they did end up choosing Mohegan Lake and Peach Lake in this area to participate in their original alum study, which it was, I do not, well, they will admit sort of now that they dosed it at about 10% of a useful value of what it really needed. And that was, and they did Peach Lake at about 15%. And then they studied it for 3 years. They studied it like the year before, the year they did it, and then 2 years afterwards, and wouldn't give us the data for a long time. And then after that, they did Honeyoid Lake, you know, up near the Finger Lakes, and they dosed that at about 25% of what it needed. So they keep doing these tests at doses that are, they know are going to be ineffective.
What's the DEC's concern? I mean, alum is used all over the...
It is indeed. It's used all over the country, all over the world.
Why is the DEC so...
Okay, we'll just jump to that for right now. So the reason is somewhere, I think after 2001, 2002, our understanding is that someone in their legal department, so the EPA registers pesticides and other, you know, chemicals that are used on lakes and the land and everything. And the EPA defines pesticides to be chemicals that kill or inhibit the growth of species. And that is, and the wording in the EPA is exactly the same wording that New York State uses in their pesticides description. But the thing is, the EPA does not considering that wording applies to alum, because alum does not kill algae, and it doesn't directly inhibit its growth. All it does is it binds phosphorus and takes the phosphorus out of the water column. So it's like if you had a buffet dinner and you take half of the material, half of the food away, you're not killing the person eating it at the other end. You may be, you know, keeping them from becoming obese. But so that's basically what alum's doing. And so EPA does not regulate alum as a pesticide. They regulate it as a nutrient inactivant, and you have to have the equivalent of the national equivalent of a species permit to apply it. But somewhere along the line, again, New York has the exact same wording in the description of what a pesticide is. They decided that alum came under the pesticide definition in New York State. And so it would have to be able to apply it, you would need to have a pesticide permit. But New York State can only give pesticide permits for materials that have a pesticide, have the rules from the EPA to be a pesticide. So they created a catch-22 for themselves, and they have not been able to get out of it ever since.
But I mean, so many other states...
Because they don't call it a pesticide, and we do.
That's what the legislation was.
And that is exactly what the legislation is trying to address. So what the legislation that we're trying to get passed, Pete Harcum, Ken actually helped write it with Pete Harcum's people, and Dana Levenberg is the sponsor in the assembly, but everybody's name is escaping me right now. Matt Slater is a co-sponsor on it. So we have both Republican and Democrat signing on in the assembly. The assembly is what we were really pushing on right now, is to try to get it, because in the Senate, Pete Harcum is the chair of the Environmental Conservation Committee. And so it has gotten through, passed in the Environmental Conservation Committee in the Senate twice now. It hasn't gotten past that because the Assembly's not doing anything. So we're really trying to work on the Assembly Environmental Conservation Committee to get as many people to sign on as co-sponsors as we can, and to try to get it. The chair of the committee is somewhat resistant, and I think the relationship with DEC, and DEC never wants to be told what to do. I mean, no agency wants to be told what to do, but basically what the legislation does, and I wasn't sure how many people will be here. I have a few copies of it if you want to look at it, and I have this one sheet thing. But basically, what the legislation does is it says there's a carve-out in the pesticides rules in New York for chemicals that are excluded. And so all we want is for nutrient inactivants to be considered excluded on the pesticide rules, and that it would still be permitted, but it'd be permitted with a Speedies permit, which is the same way, again, the EPA recommends doing it. And that it would still be, if there are wetlands issues, it would still be permitted that way. So DEC would still be in control of permitting it, but they wouldn't have to permit it as a pesticide. Therefore, they should be able to create guidelines. And so that is what the legislation does that we're trying to get through right now. And so that hopefully we can get access to using it for our lakes and we want it to be all of the, or at least a variety of nutrient inactivants, because you guys have all probably heard about phoslock, which is a lanthanum clay. And alum, when you put it in your lake, it makes the lake more acidic if you don't buffer it. And so some lakes, depending on how much you need, they may have enough internal buffering that you don't need to do anything else. But our lake, the amount we would need would have to buffer it quite a bit, because if you don't, if it gets too acidic, then the aluminum can come out as an aluminum ion, and that is toxic to a lot of things. So you need to be careful how you do it, and it should be permitted and understood. But things like the lakes in the Adirondacks tend to be more acidic by nature. And so, but things like phoslock doesn't change the pH, and so it would allow them, if they needed a nutrient inactivant, to have access to one. So, does anybody have any questions about any of that?
25% that they allowed, the maximum, where should it be?
No, well, that was just, each lake is different.
Like 10%?
The problem is it's expensive, right? And so they didn't have the money, I don't think they had the money to do what would have been a full treatment.
So that was the reason for keeping the percentage?
I think so.
Okay.
Again, haven't explicitly said that,
Right.
but it's pretty expensive.
Better than shooting off their feet and just using a little bit. It's not
Right.
gonna work.
Right. It didn't make, and they wouldn't tell us. I mean, we figured out how much they used in our lake just because I talked to the guy applying it and kind of asked out, I looked at the volume, and I knew, because I had tried to do this permit application, so I knew how much I thought should be in the lake. Yeah.
It just seems to me like, why wouldn't they share that information? It's the same way I think this is such a great thing that we're coming together, because we spend money to do this, they spend money to do this.
I know.
If we share that information, we will all benefit.
I know. They keep, from bits and pieces I've heard, there's also, DEC has a lot of different people who have different specialties, right? And so I think I got the impression it was some of the people who were more worried about the benthic organisms and things like that. They have different voices within their own groups.
But the science should be available.
Yes, yes. We had Pete Harcum push on them. We actually had we saw the data a couple of years ago, because they came and they had to give a presentation at Peach Lake. And that's how we knew about honeyoid, because I don't think honeyoid knows that much about what, they still haven't released. They've apparently gone back to honeyoid again, and that data has not come out. Because we were at one of the legislator whose honeyoid was in her district, and she was complaining that they still haven't seen the data. And there was, Ken sent out a note saying that DEC is saying, it's going to come out this spring. And we've been hearing that for almost every year.
What is your estimate of the timeline for this?
I can't give a timeline for DEC. For the bill? Bills are tricky. It depends if you can get enough support, and that's why we're recognizing there is strong support. It still may not, it's hard to say, because the there are some people, there are influential people within the committee who are not yet convinced. If we can't convince them, it may not go anywhere this year.
What are they not convinced about?
Some people are just concerned about putting anything in water, any chemical in.
It's all over the country. It doesn't make any sense.
Working in town for you to show its support for the
Write to legislators, and you can write to any, I mean, this is what you find, I mean, because I just started doing this lobbying stuff for something different, and I realized you can call any legislator, you can make appointments with them, and it's really, it's nice to see that. And so many of the people we talked to this time were saying they hadn't even heard of the bill. So we need to get it, you know, in front of them and tell them about, I mean, a lot of what we were doing was educating people. And but the more pressure they get, and when we go up to, are any of you guys going up to the NYSFOLA conference? Talk to people there, because if we can get people, lakes from all around the state to do this and talk to their legislators and get more and more legislators to sign on, because the more names there are at the end of that bill, the more likely it'll be to get through. So those are the kinds of things we're trying to do. But the more help we can get in having people write letters, having people make phone calls, that kind of stuff does make a difference. Because it gets it, you know. And I know that Dana considered, the sponsor in the assembly considers it one of her top bills that she's pushing. But it's just, but we need to give them all the help we can. Yeah.
Thank you. You said there are people of influence who are not yet convinced. Who are they, and how can they be directly appealed to?
We're trying, I would say that the chair of the committee is not. She's on the south end of Cayuga Lake, I think, her district, Ithaca, around Ithaca. It's on here. Oh, so let me just pass some of these around. So this is, I know there's only about 5, so if you want to maybe just, anybody who, and then this is, has the bill numbers on it too. It's a 1-page thing that I'll show you at the end.
Can we have one of those?
Oh, yeah.
I did just want to say one of the things
And I can send-
Deborah Glick said was that, well, but you have failing septics. And,
Yeah.
but Joe, actually, this one was for you because I was like, well, we were on that east of Hudson watershed meeting and they said that the septics is only 30%, was it 20 or 30% of the internal loading?
Yeah, so that's using the DEC's loading estimator of nutrient sources tool that is essentially giving you a breakdown of the estimated sources of strictly phosphorus into the watershed. And yeah, you would be surprised to see it's just the forest that all different sources nutrients into the water, but you know, it's also, you know, a very complicated thing, right? Because we have, especially here in Putnam Valley, a very either somewhat limited or moderately limited or severely limited soil for septic systems. So the suitability isn't great here, so unfortunately that means that often the phosphorus binding sites get bound up very quickly, and that leads to almost a direct flow of you know, septic effluent. But if the septic systems are maintained and in good order, then they should be doing some of their job to remove some of that. But yeah, it's certainly a widespread problem. But yeah, it is only a certain amount when you look at the whole picture. I think it was something like 25 or so %.
Well, also, they were saying that all the water testing we've done in Lake Peekskill for the past, I don't know how many years, if it was really a septic issue, the E. coli level would be much higher.
Right.
It's not. So there is septic issues,
Right.
but majority of the problem is from the runoff, or like you said, just organic breakdown. And
Right, and some of it is also legacy, right? There's been people here for a long, long time, so these flows of phosphorus have been coming into the lake since people were living here. In the case of Mohegan Lake, for over 150 years.
And this is where we're saying that we can do something for the runoff, but if it's phosphorus that's in the lake, alum is one of the few things
Yeah.
that can actually treat that.
Right.
That's the case we were trying to make with people, is that for a lot of us who have these legacy loads of phosphorus, this is one of the best things we can do.
Yeah.
And so, and the other thing, Dean Long, the head of the NYSCOLA, was suggesting that if it gets approved, it might also be able to be used in the water that's coming into the lake. You might be able to have, the catch basins and things with something with alum in it, so you remove some of the phosphorus before it even gets to our lake. But if it's allowed, that might have other options, other than just adding it directly.
Lakes as well as natural lakes, the alum?
As far as the way it's written, it's just water bodies.
Okay,
So the intent is that it would be anything.
so everyone can use it.
But again, DEC has to permit it still, and so they would still,
Understand.
Have that ability to control it. But this is what we're trying for.
Did you want to go back to slides? You're
Do you want
welcome
to, or do you want to just continue this, or do you need to move on to something else? So I was just, the slides
Yeah,
were
you want to
just,
just go by, show them quickly, or what you have here?
so in the most recent time, we
Sorry.
did install a new aeration system, complete lake aeration system. It's got 43 bubbling stations. And we've been doing work with, we collaborated with Greg Boyer from SUNY ESF, and we had an in-lake monitor for like. In case you have any interest, so that is my kids' beach. That is what it looks like much of the summer. We get really healthy blue-green algae blooms.
Do you bring in artificial sand? I mean, you bring in sand artificially to create it?
We have a few times.
And do you continue to do it despite the doubts?
Well, we get them here when the wind's blowing this way. I mean, it doesn't seem to be generated from our beach. It's just this is a cove that catches it, because we have it all over. But we
Right,
haven't.
the sand catches it.
Well, it's because this is a U-shaped section, and that's what catches it, is because we have a point that goes out here.
Okay.
And so
But you're still bringing in new sand?
we have, like, in the last 5 years, we maybe have once. We don't do it every year, we just do it. And we've probably done it twice in the last 15 years or something. So, but this was our aeration project. We basically had an old aeration system. We pulled out everything from that for the new one. They built
one new shed and another one, but they put really good sound insulation in it. So if anybody ever wants to come down, you're welcome to come down and visit our shed. And because it has this massive pump in it. And then,
Worth mentioning that you guys work with
yes, John Tucci's the one who put this in.
Lake Peekskill.
Yeah. So John seemed, we talked to a bunch of different places, and he just seemed to be the most transparent in what he was going to be doing, and worked with us on things.
It's everywhere.
Yeah. But, so this is basically, you have a huge pump, and then you have a manifold that all of the tubes going off of it, you can actually control them individually, they can adjust so that you get uniform pressure, because again, the ones that go into the deepest parts, you need to have it at higher pressure than the ones that are in the lower parts. So you try to equalize the amount of air coming into all the different bubblers. One of them was, we added to a different shed, and we had to have the pipes going off. That's one of our diffusers. It's a ceramic diffuser, and they bring them up once a year and clean them. And that's, you can see where the red circle is, one of the bubblers. So you get these different spots around the lake. So whenever I walk my dogs, I can make sure, check and make sure. Because in the first year, it kept overheating. And I'd go, no, it's not working. So, and that's where we did our sampling. So we did the diffusers are basically more or less along the spine of the lake, because that's the deepest. But we were doing measurements like off in this cove on the left and at the far end. And so we did some of them far away in shallow water. And then we did the deep, so we did, I think, 4 shallow water and 4 deep water the first year to just see how it was. And that was the thermocline before we started. And people say if you were only 12 feet deep or whatever, you don't have a thermocline. Our thermocline kicked in at just between 8 and 9 feet. It was the midpoint of our thermocline. And we have a very healthy thermocline without this. The line across the top, that's after we turn the aerators on. So, and it's true, it was true in the 8-foot sections that were way away from any diffusers, and in the wherever we tested, pretty much once the aeration is on for a little while, we get uniform oxygenation, and it stays well above, you don't want it to get below 4. So we put it in 23. It definitely reduced the anoxia on the bottom, and it kept the thermocline from forming. However, it didn't reduce the total chlorophyll or the total phosphorus. And the first year we did get a reduction in the amount of cyanobacteria. Unclear last year whether it really helped as much. We definitely didn't have too many closures. And so you guys, last year was really bad for you, right? Yeah, so we were better than you guys. I will say that last year. We didn't think we were doing so well. But we use copper sulfate.
Last year you used,
We use it every year.
regardless of the accumulation of the water?
Because it's the only way to keep the lakes warm. Like I said, we stopped for a while, and it got so bad that, again, the smell, Allison said, where you get the big blooms and then they die, and you get the smells and all the pain and all of that, and people were just really complaining. Although, do you remember when, maybe you guys didn't hear about it, there were people at the mall on Route 6 complaining of a gas leak because of the smell? It was our lake, the cyanobacteria from the lake. It was the smell from the lake that was spreading, that the wind was spreading that far that people thought it was gas leak. So we do have bad blooms. It's the only thing they'll permit for us. You do it. Oh yeah, copper sulfate you can do every 2 weeks. And we do it every 2 weeks. And we try to use, there's different formulations, so we don't use straight copper sulfate, we use some that have, that stay in the water column. They have it like a surfactant or different things. So, but it's the only way we can keep the lake swimmable. We were hoping that we could get rid of them, and we have not been able to. Yeah.
Thank you. You said that aerators did reduce algae blooms. That's pretty ambiguous. So what kind of reduction?
Well, again, year to year, like every lake changes. So that year, we had very few harmful algae blooms.
So you'd say it was like a drastic reduction in your opinion?
In that year, it seemed like it was.
And thereafter?
Last year, it's only been, again, we're on our third year now.
Yeah. It's not a big data set.
It's not a big data set,
What
every
happened
year
to
is
be
different.
successful?
And that year was also the year we had the big flood. And so there was a lot more water that got flushed out. And so it may have just been that. So it's so hard to say.
But with a lot of water being flushed in, you also have the addition of a lot of those phosphorus.
You do, but the thing is, there's that first flush is when you get a lot of the phosphorus, right? So if it all comes at once, you're going to eventually, most of the later stuff is going to have a little less, it's going to have taken in all the stuff that's going, more of it.
Yeah, it's going to be,
You're going to get a little sediment coming
it's
through.
going to be a heavy load of phosphorus in the very beginning.
Right, right. Yeah.
Do you have any, you experience any die-offs of like crayfish or snails or anything?
I've never seen a crayfish in our lake.
Do you have otters in your lake?
We've had one, I mean, people, there was one year that there was one who hung out there a bit.
So you would know if there were crayfish if you have otters.
Okay, we've only had one that I remember. We've had beaver a few times that have come over. The town, because they dam up the outlet, which means the water floods over. That would be my choice. That is not what our town does. They don't let you relocate them because nobody wants them.
Yeah, don't rebuild it. You have that
Yeah.
Yes, they do. They do.
Very smart engineer.
So I was just going to show one more thing because I need to have other stuff.
Yes.
So what we're trying to do with the biologicals, again, suggested by Tucci, was that instead of putting it down from the top, instead of going out in boats and doing it, if you see where the red lines are, there would be, again, hoses on the bottom that would have small holes in them, and so you'd be emitting the bacteria near the sediment, near the muck that it's supposed to be eating up. And so, and this is something that is fairly new to do it this way, to put these lines in as distribution mechanism. So this is what we're trying to do if we can get DEC to ever give us a permit.
Yeah, that's what we're trying to get.
So,
John is trying to do that here.
here too.
We just can't get the permit through to have it introduced.
Well, that's the thing, if they give it to us, then you'll be set. And Ken is trying, I mean, he's really, he keeps, the DEC keeps saying, we're not done yet, we're not done yet. And then I think he got something saying they rejected it, but he doesn't know yet why they rejected it. And so anyway, so it's an ongoing process. It's like getting the bill passed and working with DEC.
There should be an onus on them, it's like, they can't just keep turning them down. If they say this spring, and it's not this spring, there should be a real reason that it's not done, or you're just not doing your job. And if you're not doing your job, goodbye. Stalling is not a tactic of best.
So I can send, you have these, right, Allison? I sent them to you if you wanted to pass them on. There's a one-page thing and I was sent about, and that just sort of gives information about what the bill is trying to do and why, and we were requesting of everybody that they co-sponsor it.
Can you go back to the last slide?
Yep.
When I've tried to make phone calls on the federal level, if I'm not a constituent of that person, they don't even want to take a message from me. Are you saying that this Sunday woman from south of Cayuga, she's more receptive to people from out of her area, that she will take a phone call and listen to comments?
I think they listen to comments. I think that, their districts are smaller. And again, I've been the one making the appointments, and I'm not in any of their districts, and we get appointments with them, and they listen very, with interest in the ones that we get to talk to, or their staff does. So my experience has actually been pretty good, at least at the state level.
can look them up. The people on the subcommittee,
But tell me what the subcommittee is.
it's the Environmental Conservation
Oh,
Committee.
is Steve Otis on that?
Otis is actually on the bill. He signed on to the bill.
Good.
You can look up the bill, and it will show you who all the co-sponsors are. We have about 13 right now, which is pretty good, and there's more that should be coming, because for some reason, there's others that, we talked to, and they were very supportive, and their names haven't appeared yet, so they're working. Again, we're working on it, but anybody can have connections with anybody else, even if they're not on that committee. Having their names never hurts. So, thank you. I'll hang out in case you have any questions.
Yeah, you're welcome to take more questions. Thank you very much. Did you want to just introduce yourself and your role here?
Sure.
And I don't know if
Great microphone. Use. I don't know, will they see the microphone on camera? Okay. How's it going, guys? I'm Ray Garris. I'm here because I'm the vice chair of Putnam County's Soil and Water Conservation District. And Crystal Stoll is our secretary of the board and knows way more about water than I do. Treasurer. I'm the secretary also. I have a lot of roles, a lot of stuff going on. But one of the things that we've been doing is we've been traveling around to different lake communities in Putnam County to educate folks on us, our existence, what we're able to do, how we help lake communities among other areas of Putnam County, and trying to just get on everybody's radar. After years of mismanagement of this district by Putnam County, we've recently become an independent subdivision of New York State municipality. So what we're able to do is we get direct funding from New York State to give to private landowners, lake communities, agricultural purposes, to help mitigate conservation efforts. And so, for example, if, let's say this legislation passes and there's some level of funding needed for Lake Peekskill to be able to implement some of this mitigation, you could qualify for some funding from our district to help ease that burden on taxpayers. And so what we've been doing is we've been going around to, I go to the Lake Carmel Park Advisory Board meetings. They have the same phosphorus issues that you guys are dealing with as well. Those numbers talked about before are exactly the same numbers over on the east side of the county in Lake Carmel. A lot of the phosphorus comes from a lot of runoff. And Lake Carmel is a good example of this because there's not surrounding forests, there's not surrounding agriculture that prevents the runoff from reaching the water. Even though there are septic issues, that is certainly an issue, there's a lot of other mitigation efforts that we can do. And as you guys, as a lake community, begin to take up those efforts, as you well know, they become very costly, and they become very costly very quickly. So what we are setting up for the first time ever is sort of a grant program for the different lake communities. What we're doing in this first year of the new existence of the Soil and Water Conservation Board is setting up several grant funds for different types of communities that we as a board touch. So we are setting aside $200,000 total. $60,000 is being set aside for lake communities. That number we hope to increase as years go on, but what we're looking to do is rebuild the district essentially from the ground up, as I mentioned, due to many years of mismanagement. And so when we get the funds from New York State, our mission is not to have them. Our mission is to get them out to private landowners, especially our lake communities. Putnam County is a really unique county as it has a ton of lakes, it has a ton of forests, and has a ton of agriculture. And so what we want to be able to do is get our money out to each of these different mitigation efforts. And so whether it's alum, hopefully that goes through. And that's the other thing I want to say clearly. Chris and I were kind of talking as this presentation was going on. Allison was great enough to sort of talk to me over the last week or so about her efforts up in Albany, what she was trying to accomplish. I've spoken with Assemblywoman Levenberg, I've spoken with Assemblyman Slater, and I've spoken with Senator Harcum. We are looking at supporting this as well. We're hoping to lend our weight to any letter that goes to any of them or to anyone else as a conservation district. Additionally, we also can help with grant writing. So if you guys write grants that you're looking for funding for some of these things, we can co-sponsor that. And a lot of times the weight of a county conservation district goes a long way. And so the last thing I'll say is that there are 62 counties in New York State, 58 of them have conservation districts, soil and water conservation districts. And so Putnam County has one, and we're ready to get back out and actually help the landowners and the taxpayers to hopefully save some of your own money for some of the things that you need to do. And so we have public meetings that are open to the public once a month. Our next one is going to be, I think, in May sometime. We're trying to May 20th. So we used to hold them at DPW, which is over in Carmel/Patterson over there. We've been recently holding them at the county office building. What we do is we publicly notice them on our Facebook page, and so you can follow us on Facebook if you have Facebook, Putnam County Soil and Water Conservation District. We have a website, pcswcd.org. I have no clue how I got those letters right in order, but I did, I think.
PCSWCD.
Yeah. So you can go to our website. We notice the agenda. We know we're getting there. As I said, we're excited because a lot of this is brand new. The district has been under county control for many decades, since it was established in 1966. And so only recently has it become independent. I got on the board last July. I was appointed by the Putnam County Legislature. Crystal was appointed later that year, and she started her term in January. We also have a brand new chair, Cassandra Roth, and we're all very enthusiastic about having this district meet its actual potential, which is to help you guys. And so right now, we get hundreds of thousands of dollars every single year from New York State to give out to these types of projects. And the reason we're able to keep that funding coming is because we come to meetings like this and provide educational outreach. And the state then says, oh, you were here? Here's some more money. And then we hope to give that back to you guys. So as we get going, as we build this up, please consider us. Our email is out there as well, so make sure you send us some emails. You're welcome to come to meetings and raise issues with us. Since we've been up and running again, lake communities like Dixon Lake, Lake Carmel, they have come to our meetings to make us aware of various issues that are going on. Even if we can't help financially because it's a massive problem, we can usually also just lend our weight, whether it be letter writing, whether it be calling the different legislators or the different elected officials. We try to work really well with our towns. You guys have three great, a town supervisor and two great council people who I happen to know all three of them and have great respect for all three of them. So what we're trying to do is continue to bridge these gaps and bring everybody together. Putnam County is a very local facing community. The county's not that big. We're a big, small town, right? And so what we want to do is make sure that we're providing as much help as we can, and that's our goal.
I'll add 2 points to that. So
It's just a tiny mic.
Yeah, you can't pinch it too hard because it'll break.
Back there, I'm
but
loud enough. Okay. Okay. I'll just add 2 points to that. I think it's awesome that Putnam Valley, people from different lake communities have gotten together to create this maybe future formal commission. We are hoping to do something similar on a county level, to have all the different lake communities on a county level to do something similar, share the resources, share the research, share what's been done, possibly share tools. I actually had a question for you about what weed harvester did you get? Would a hydro rake be helpful? That's something we've heard. We could potentially, understand that these things, equipment, very expensive. We could potentially do an equipment share. Would it be helpful for the county to own a hydro rake? Different lake communities could use them. There's a lot that goes into that, including insurance and who will operate said machinery.
District.
Yeah, sorry, the county district, sorry.
County government.
Yes, the district. So that's something that I just wanted to mention. I also did want to mention, please give us some grace. We are ramping up, and so please don't get frustrated if you do come to a meeting and then nothing happens for a month or two. We're working on it, and with that, I also want to shameless plug. We are hiring. I feel like this is a great community for if you know anyone. We're looking for a district technician. So the salary is between $60,000 and $70,000. It would be working straight for the district. It would be benefits, remote to start, eventually to report in person to some office in Putnam County. But I did just want to make that plug because I actually feel like this is a great community of people who probably know someone who might be interested. So we are looking.
What kind of technician?
It'd be a district technician. So the full job posting is on our Facebook page.
But right now, because we are ramping up and starting kind of from scratch, it would be everything. It would be as much autonomy as you'd like and as much, you take the reins. One of the things we do is our AEM program, so the Agriculture Environmental Management Program.
That's where we work with a lot of farms who may be having some environmental mitigation issues. So let's say this is a... And we're back. Let's say that this is a farm that is also by a waterway, right? So Putnam Valley is a great example. My in-laws live in Putnam Valley, and they live on Peekskill Hollow Road, and there's this beautiful stream that runs through, but that's a protected water source. Let's say this was a working farm that had some type of gravel pile, a manure pile, a fertilizer runoff issue that was getting into the stream. The farm is made aware of it, and rather than facing any type of penalties or fines, they would be a part of our AEM program, and there's actually funding available to give to them to mitigate that issue without incurring any penalties or fines. And so...
Can I ask a question about that? We have a horse farm.
Yeah.
That is right above Lake Asquewanna.
Great.
And it runs, we had a problem with manure running into Lost River, which is a tributary to Lake Asquewanna. And we were told that because it had an agricultural license,
I'm going to get aggravated by this next statement.
we could do nothing. The town had no power to do anything to zone to prevent this.
We're going to talk after. Part of the challenge is I mentioned mismanagement before. There's a lot of the mismanagement occurs with education. Unfortunately, the educational outreach hasn't been there. Has anyone heard of the Putnam County Soil and Water Conservation District Board? 2 people. Okay, great. So, what we need to be doing is a little bit more of this education. So sir, and I didn't get your name.
I'm Sheriff Lomax.
Alan, great to meet you. This is a situation where there's actually a few avenues for you to be able to get help with this, especially if you're a working horse farm. There's the agricultural district, which is a huge part of this. In the past, the county would try to discourage farms from joining the ag district. We actually helped a farm from Patterson sue Putnam County because of this, and they won in state Supreme Court last April. So that hopefully no longer happens, but it's also how we actually got here. So, there's a lot of mitigation factors, but the AEM program is one of them. And just to circle back to your question about what the district tech would be doing, if there are mitigation efforts, if site visits are required, if paperwork is required, following up and reaching out to different agencies, the district tech would be doing a lot of those things. We are a board of volunteers. So I don't get paid, Crystal doesn't get paid, our chair doesn't get paid. We also have 2 active Putnam County legislators who, per state law, are mandated to be on the board with us. And so what districts across New York State have are paid staff. They typically have what's called a district manager and a district technician. Some of them are very robust. Dutchess and Ulster County, for example, have their own building. We're trying to get an office room. So this district tech is going to be our first hire as a new district, and they'll be taking on some of those responsibilities. The hope is in years 2, 3, and 4, we begin to grow because more farms or more properties know about us and are trying to utilize our resources, and so we need more staff to get there. And that's why this early education is so important.
Can we talk after?
Well, I would love to. Yeah, please. That's what this is about, man.
All farms should be following best management practices. So even if you're in agriculture, there should still be best management practices, and that's part of the education piece.
And just so you know, with the AEM program in particular, a lot of farms need to know this, that it's confidential. And so if you are facing a mitigation issue, a lot of farms are afraid to be involved because they're afraid of getting in trouble. But it's actually kept confidential because you're taking the proactive step in getting it fixed. Your town government does not know that you are the farm, and we are able to give this to you. And this is permitted, and this is funding that comes to us from New York State. It's a New York State managed program.
I'll actually add to that. Not only is it confidential, that data is completely scrubbed. So even when we save anything on the cloud, for example, it's already been scrubbed, and it's non-foilable as well. So it is actually literally very, very confidential. In general, the district is not regulatory. So beyond the AEM program, the district is not regulatory. We are not, if anytime you call someone from the district or our future staff to come on site and to help you and you're asking about questions, we're not here to write citations or anything like that. We are not here to report you to some other agency that writes citations or anything like that. Unfortunately, we have heard things of years past. We are not regulatory.
Yeah, and just on that note, you should know, the AEM program is something Putnam County's participated in for a couple years now. We have over 55, I think, official working farms in Putnam County. Only one of them is in our AEM program. The more farms that join and participate in the multiple tiers, the more funding we get from New York State for the participation. And so it's a shame that we only have one farm that even knows about this program. So there'll be more information forthcoming about that as well.
I mean, the reason is they're probably afraid of government regulation instead of government people assisting them.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's a huge part of it, unfortunately. The other part of it is that there's, we as I don't mean we as in Crystal and I, but we as a existing district since 1966 haven't done a good enough job of outreach. And that's a huge part of this. And to Crystal's point, that's why we make it clear we're not regulatory. Our goal is to help and to help mitigate and to help with conservation efforts. We have no ability to regulate, and we also have no ability to report or do anything like that. The more we get in front of folks like yourselves, hopefully we start to build that comfort level, and trust. Are there any other questions, thoughts, concerns?
Yeah, not to steal the floor, but
Yeah.
thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, and by the way, what I came here and listened to you talk, I just want to thank you for all of your efforts. And I was very, I don't live in Putnam Valley, but just really fortunate to hear all the work that you're doing. And hopefully we didn't come and take any of that thunder. I mean, this is the priority. But just an opportunity to solve. I mean, we want to help with this. Hopefully we can write letters as a district and help you in your efforts. Okay, thank you.
I have one question. You asked for questions.
Yes, sir.
You said before that you do have a little bit of pull as far as being a district and having funding from the state. Is there any way that you can get behind addressing Deborah Glick with a letter or perhaps a hearing?
We could talk about it. I can't commit to it because every decision we make, we have to do as a board, so it has to come to a vote. We absolutely could functionally do that, yes, 100%. Actually, as this was going on, I was texting with Dana Levenberg and was like, hey, we're going to talk about this legislation. And she wrote back, awesome, thank you. So yes, absolutely, we have the ability to do that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all, and again, thank you very much.
Thank you. And Brett, Laura's from Mohegan Lake, so this is an example of the intermunicipal relationships that we're forming.
Yeah,
I'm from Westchester, and we have Joe Scapoli, our watershed inspector from the city of Peekskill, who I'm going to bring up next. Yes. Yes, that's what I was wondering.
Westchester has a great soil and water conservation. In fact, when we first came on the board and we had to move on from the current setup that Putnam County was using, Westchester's Soil and Water Conservation Board was gracious enough to assist us. So one of the major things that we do as a conservation board is we admit farms into what's called the agricultural district in every county in New York State. And it requires a soil and water board to be able to help with agriculture mapping, soil mapping, and all these other things. And we were not doing that. In fact, prior to this past year, for 5 consecutive years, Putnam County failed to admit any of its applicants into the agriculture district. So the first thing we did is we moved on from the former personnel who was part of that, and Westchester Soil and Water was gracious enough to lend us their district, who we were able to refer Putnam County. And as such, there have been several applicants this year who, should they meet the criteria, we hope to see move forward. But Westchester was extremely helpful with that.
Thank you. Joe, come on up. And I did want to just mention that one of the things that Deborah Glick said when we met her that day with Matt Slater was a little bit about the septics. But you have been on the planning board, and I mentioned this to you that I have been on the Zoom with you. And then internal loading.
I don't have the figure in front of me.
Right, that's what I said. I said, well, I don't have my notes in front of me, but, and then she said, well, but that could still be from fertilizer.
Right,
So maybe you can just speak, I mean, you can share whatever you'd like to, but those were some of the points I was trying to hit on.
Yeah, certainly. So I didn't come prepared with anything. I just figured.
Informal
But
meeting.
yes, exactly. It's informal. So yes, I'm Joe Scapoli, watershed inspector, city of Peekskill. I'm managing the Wickapee reservoirs, the outflow of them, everything like that. Luckily rebounded after this, drought kind of hit us really bad. I brought a little map of the watershed in case you're curious what falls within our watershed. Right, it's very thin. It goes between two ridges. And then we take, we have 33,000 acres we're in charge of, right, essentially. And, I was going through it with our regulations. We have some regulations that were put in 1911, right? And that was before automobiles became a thing. So obviously, they're a little out of date. Is something I'm looking at for the long term of updating. But yeah, so let's get into the Lens project. I'm working with Riverkeeper. Riverkeeper received a grant from the Hudson River Estuary Program where they are studying nutrient sources and specifically phosphorus in the Peekskill Hollow Creek watershed. So part of that is the DEC is running this loading estimator of nutrient sources tool, which is just basically a GIS map and calculations based on the land cover in the watershed, and then estimating how much phosphorus should be there. It's not an actual test, but we are also taking the data from my source water monitoring project on the Peekskill Hollow Creek. I was testing in 4 locations, like right outside of Ponchos and Gringos, and at the Granite Mountain Preserve, and up in Kent, and then another last one about 1.5 miles north of our pumping station in Cortland. So we have a ton of data from there, and then also thanks to all of you and some people that are likely not here, we also have the CSLAP data to look at. So Riverkeeper is going through and analyzing that data and is going to put together a lot of really cool charts that I'm hoping are going to be useful for just educating the public and also to look at those actual sampling results versus what we're getting from the estimates, right? So we're hoping to pull some recommendations out of all of that and then basically deliver them. And we just got a look on yesterday, at the skeleton of the report. It's going to be a massive report, I'm sorry, but we're going to try to pare it down to make it a little bit more digestible. And then, that along with some of the other plans that we're working on and we have already, as some of you may know, the city of Peekskill has a drinking water source protection plan, which basically outlines a long-term, and it's a comprehensive plan for projects and ideas that can be executed in the watershed to help try to prevent future contamination and gain a better understanding of the watershed. I was surprised when I joined in 2023, and we didn't really have a lot of data on the creek itself. So that was our first priority. We're two years through that. I got a little bit more money from the Hudson River Estuary Program for another grant to do a little bit more monitoring on some neglected tributaries and just to get an idea of what's coming into the Wickapee Reservoir. And then we have another one that we're in the process of accepting an open space plan. So we're going to look through all of the properties throughout the watershed and kind of develop an idea because of a project that we had done 2024, which was purchasing a property right near the Wickapee Reservoir for preservation, for conservation, to try to prevent any development because it's a property with steep slopes and a wetland. So if there was to be a building built there, you would imagine there would, during construction, a lot of turbidity and then just the impacts of development over time. So we wanted to, we got that project, but we wanted to, in the future, have a guiding plan to go forward. So we're not just willy-nilly, oh, this property is for auction, let's just get that one, right? So we want to prioritize the projects that are going to have the best impact on our creek. So, you know, we're out here, we're working, we're trying to find sources of contamination and trying to eliminate them over time and just protect our drinking water source, because there's 25,000 people in Peekskill alone, and then we're a backup supply for another 75,000 residents of neighboring municipalities like Cortland, Buchanan, Montrose, everybody over there. So, yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
I just wanted to add that something we touched on with the alum is that alum is used to treat reservoirs. So that seemed like a very important point that wasn't said. I wanted to make sure that was known, that currently in New York State, they're already using it to treat reservoirs. And not just reservoirs, but municipal drinking water. So when I first heard about this, I was like, well, but they'd never let us treat our lakes with that because our lakes are feeding the Hollowbrook Creek. And then they said, but yet it's being done on the other end.
Yeah, so
you could speak a little bit to that.
I can go into it. So we have a state-of-the-art filter plant. It was built in 2010 in Peekskill, and it uses alum in the treatment process because alum is a coagulant. So essentially, what we're doing is creating flock or getting all of the organic matter that you people feed to us. No, I'm just kidding. All of the organic matter, we coagulate it, and then essentially we bubble air in from the bottom of these giant tanks, and it floats all of that flock to the surface. And then we scrape that off, send it through filters, chlorinate it, and then, you know, treat the water to make sure it doesn't corrode the pipes, so we don't end up like Flint. And then make sure, you know, we have good water going out throughout the city. We're testing every day, and, you know, we don't have any impacts from the alum itself in our drinking water. But I think the concern from the DEC's end is exactly what she said, where if your lake gets too acidic, then it can precipitate into just aluminum ions. Yes, exactly. So I know the DEC has concerns with that. And so back to the lens project, I believe Riverkeeper is looking at sometime in June. We're going to have to schedule a time to present that report. So I think that report would be, or that presentation would be a good opportunity for everybody here to kind of get a sense for where we're at in the latest study on the creek, right? And hopefully that will provide a lot of recommendations, and like they've described it, Dan Shapley's described it as a menu of options. Right, so we're not telling, you know, Putnam Valley or Cortland or Kent or Carmel, you have to do this. We are offering a bunch of different options that could help mitigate the problem.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Any questions for Joe?
So I just have a question regarding what happens to the byproduct of having the water that's been treated with alum?
So what's the byproduct? So the byproduct, essentially it's like a slurry of organic matter, and that goes, we ship that out. And then I think farms, not farms, but these processors take it and then turn it into fertilizer. Okay. So that's usually the end product. I don't know too much about that process, but.
But alum is being used not only in municipal water sources, but in treating actual reservoirs.
In treating reservoirs,
so
yeah.
So they know how to do it safely.
Right.
Well, DEC is permitting its use
yes.
currently, with a speedies permit.
So DEC is permitting it currently
for a different
to treat
use.
reservoirs.
Yes.
That seems hypocritical then.
Yeah.
This whole thing, what you just said seems completely hypocritical to me. If you're using it in reservoirs, which is obviously drinking water, then it makes no sense.
So I just wanted to make the point that they know how to use it safely. And I'm from Massachusetts, and I was just interestingly there, last year, and Alan, I came back to budget meetings, and Alan was talking about the alum, and I just happened to notice that my dad lives in Orleans, and there's a lake there called Crystal Lake. Crystal Lake was crystal clear. That's all I know. And the kids were swimming in it, and I understand there's a lot of history there with using these treatments. And I want to be clear that alum is not the only one. Also, and I'm not saying that it would be appropriate for Lake Peekskill. I'm not the person to make that call, but I think that it would be appropriate to be a tool in the basket, just like it is in so many other states and around the world, so.
Right. I think it would be valuable to bring in the DEC if we could figure out who there would be interested in joining.
Thank you.
And then from there, we could, discuss them, ask questions to them, and, I think that would be a great idea to help resolve some of our questions. Go ahead.
So it's not directed towards you per se, but when you were talking about alum, using alum, it's going to be kind of long-winded. So
Maybe you should come on the mic though, because we want to make sure it's on the video.
do I have to stand up? I don't want to have to stand
Okay,
up,
all right.
but I will use the mic. I will use the mic. So you had spoke about using alum, and I guess the first part would be, what is the byproduct of using alum? Doesn't that create more muck inside of the lake? When it bonds, doesn't that create would it add to the sediment to the lake?
So it creates a flock, like you said.
Right.
Sure to hear the answer though.
Yeah.
But I was We should use the boom, but I'm trying to be videographer. But come up here,
Yeah,
so
yes.
you're in the video. If you don't mind.
So it will create a flock, like he's talking about, although instead of going to the surface, because you're putting air in to get it to go. And it will go down to the bottom, and it will become part of the sediment at the bottom. But all of the material coming into your lake is also I did a calculation for my lake when we wanted to do a rather large dosage. And if you consider the crystalline amount, it was less than a 1/16 of an inch of solid material. And if you do an application correctly, and if you're controlling the phosphorus coming in, one of the lakes in Vermont that the state actually paid for their alum applications. They did one in the 80s, and they're doing one again now. So when treatment lasted 40 years. Now, with our lakes, it probably wouldn't, but you would dose them to go, I think Dean was saying the average is 5 to 15 years. You do it once, and so it's not like the copper that we're using now, where we're dosing it every 2 weeks, all summer long. You do it once, and it should. So will it add a little bit? Yes, but not that much. It's not a big volume of stuff.
Okay. And I guess the second question, the other thing was, so in the paper, you mentioned, I guess it was a general statement, because it doesn't necessarily say alum specifically, it says like alum. So like other bioinhibitors, is that what the terminology
The
was?
nutrient inactivants?
Yeah, there it is, yeah, so.
Okay.
There's several, but
Yeah.
you're specifically targeting alum.
So alum is the least expensive.
Okay,
And for most places, least expensive, it's still expensive. But for a lot of lakes that in our area, they are considered to be well buffered. Usually the pH is something around 8. And so you have a little bit of wiggle room before it would get too acidic. Like I said, the amount, I know because of doing the calculations, the amount that my lake would need, we would have to add buffering to it to make sure it stayed in the safe range.
Right.
But you can do that with alum.
okay. I guess just the overall, this ties back to your comment, but I think overall, if they're treating alum inside of the reservoir, I think the key differentiator between a reservoir and a lake is that they're filtering the water when it leaves. So maybe they're mitigating some of the alum byproduct of alum through that process, and why that might not be a key candidate for a lake.
So actually, when they use it in the reservoirs, they use it because it'll flock. My
so they don't need-
understanding
okay.
is they're actually using it to get rid of
Okay.
the things that are in the water that they don't want people drinking.
To clarify.
But like the way you
Yeah,
use it, to
okay.
clarify it.
Okay.
And so they're actually, I think that's why DEC permits it now, because they're permitting it as a flocculant, not as to get rid of the phosphorus per se. It's a slightly different, it's doing the same thing, but it has different names on it. And so anyway, but
And remember that
Thank
a
you.
reservoir is for drinking water. Most of our lakes, we want to keep the biodiversity there. We want to keep them healthy, and we don't drink the water for most of the lakes. They're not for that. So there's a different purpose of the lakes and therefore a different concern with what you introduce into them.
Well, I know, but I'm just saying, like, from a reservoir's perspective, that's like, I would say, the most critical, right? Because you're actually consuming that, whereas a lake, I mean, you consume it by being in it, right? It's a little bit different. It's like, yeah, it's like, dropping in still water, and if you get amoeba in your eye, it's, yeah. That's.
Thank you.
I think one last thing, just because we've said it a few times now, so we don't actually use alum in our reservoir on the plant. We use it within the actual plant, right? So it's not something that we're applying to our reservoir. And one of the reasons, it's like the same reason that we don't pump after like a rain event when it's very turbid in the creek, or recently with the bridge construction we've had to shut off our pumps a fair amount of times because they have to put the foundation in the creek bed. So it's just a matter of what has to happen. So we don't want to fill in our reservoir because that's just going to lead to costs on our end down the road if we have to dredge, right? We want to maintain the capacity of our reservoir. We can hold about 40 million gallons, but we do about 4 million gallons a day. So we have like a 5 to 8 day supply of water up there in the event that we did have to shut off our water source, which has happened only once in my time here, and it was just due to a fluke event during the 2023 storms where there was the fire department unfortunately pumped the water. They were helping a neighbor out and pumping water out of their basement, but hadn't noticed that the oil tank had flipped in the basement and released a bunch of oil. So we were off for a little while we got the test to confirm that there wasn't any impact 12 miles downstream where we pump from. So other than that, we really haven't had a scenario where the water is undrinkable or anything like that, but we have noticed that there is a significant amount of total organic carbon in the water, right? And this is a main focus of ours because that total organic carbon, when you add chlorine to that, it creates these byproducts that we've known since the 70s are carcinogens. They're called either disinfection byproducts, is just a broad term, but trihalomethanes are one of those groups. But essentially, yeah, we have to monitor those monthly and just ensure that we're not producing water that's toxic. So it's a very, very complicated thing, water treatment. We have guys working around the clock, making sure our water is all good. But it's a very, very tricky subject, and it varies throughout the seasons. Because some right around July-ish, we'll start releasing water from Wicopee, and that usually is a little bit clearer water because that water's been sitting there. It's a fully forested watershed, so it's pristine up there, really. There's no anthropogenic influences onto it, other than the dams themselves. But I feel like I've said my piece, and
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Thanks. Thank you. Yes. Any other questions you guys have?
Have an overlay of the roads, or it's just the waters?
Got the tectonic here.
It's got major roads.
Okay, major roads.
6.
Yeah, county and state roads.
Any other questions? Yeah, thoughts?
Want to say anything?
I just want to say thank you. Thank you for all the information. It was
Yes.
really informative, and I appreciate it. Learned a lot tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for coming, and thank you again for the presentation and taking the time to be here with your neighbor. Your neighbor lake. Neighbor lakes. All right. Any other? We're good? All right. Thank you all for coming. All right.